Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webcast. My name is Christine Dursey Davis. I'm the Executive Director of the Ohio chapter of the American Planning Association, and I am your webcast moderator. Today is Friday, February 14th, and we will be hearing the presentation Planning All Over the World, U.S. Planners Working Overseas. This is going to be a really interesting session. For technical help during today's webcast, you can type your questions in the chat box located in your GoToWebinar tool panel. And for questions related to the presentation, you can again just type those in that chat box, and we'll answer those at the end of the presentation during the Q&A. And I ask that you just please, in your question, list who it is that you would like to answer the question. There we go. Today's sponsors, the APA International Division and APA, the National Capital Area Chapter, are co-sponsoring today's event, which we love when we get to collaborate across our divisions and our chapters. And you'll hear a little bit more about both that division and chapter in just a moment. And hopefully by our next webcast, I'll have a list of all of our sponsoring chapters and divisions, but everyone's kind of still shuffling in their dues for the year. So hopefully we'll have that for next week. Our upcoming webcast, you'll be able to see if you head over to ohioplanning.org/planning webcast. You'll be able to see all of our upcoming webcasts. And I apologize for the banging in the background. I have a sick baby at home with me, and I'm trying to keep him quiet, but you know, he has a lot to say today. To log your CM credits for attending today's webcast, just head over to planning.org, log into your MyAPA account, and then you can search via the title or the event number. This is the, I believe this is not the correct event number, so don't write it down. Just head over to ohioplanning.org/planning webcast for all of the information that you need to get that one submitted. And this webcast has been approved for 1.5 CM credits, so make sure you get that logged. And let's be friends. Like us on Facebook, Planning Webcast Series, to receive up-to-date information on our sessions, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Head over to YouTube and just type in Planning Webcast in the search bar, and we'll pop up along with our over 300 recordings of our sessions. We have over 2,000 subscribers, so please be sure to join us. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Mark, who's going to get things kicked off for us. Mark, I just gave you the controls. Is that how we're doing this?
Sure. Hold on one second. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, everything looks great. Thanks, Mark.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. This is Mark Lewis DeGrace. I'm the Professional Development Officer elect of the National Capital Area Chapter, which is Washington, D.C., along with 2 suburban counties. And as Christine noted earlier, this is a joint CM webinar we're doing with the International Division. In Washington, D.C., we're unique because we have several jurisdictions, 2 states, the District of Columbia, several counties, but we also have planners from all around the world who work for the World Bank, for the Inter-American Development Bank, and you see a lot of planners working overseas as well. And for this webinar, we wanted to highlight some U.S. planners who are currently working overseas, so kind of the reverse of that. And with that, I'll hand the audio over to Tippy if you want to take over.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. As Mark mentioned, this is a joint CM webinar sponsored by the National Capital Area Chapter and the International Division. And we're very lucky and excited to share the CM webinar with you. And we'll hear from 4 US trained planners based on 3 continents outside the US, outside of North America today. Before we get started, I just wanted to let all you listeners know that both the National Capital Area Chapter and the International Division will be hosting a joint reception with the Sustainable Communities, Private Practice, and Latinos in Planning Division at the APA's National Planning Conference in Houston. So be on the lookout for details in the conference program and through your divisions, as this will be a ticketed event. The International Division of the APA, I'm the Vice Chair of Special Events for the division. This division is active in promoting information, networking, and professional development opportunities related to international planning, and some of our members are on this panel today. The division has over 1,500 total members based in the US and around the world. Our members are working internationally or also just planners who are interested in working and traveling internationally as planners as well. This webinar began with a discussion of how US trained planners can get more involved with the global challenges of rapid urbanization in the developing world and the growing impact of climate change on cities large and small, not just within the US, but internationally. While most planners work in the US work at a local or county level, there are many planners who are trained in the US but find themselves working and living outside of the country. These planners today, Michael Brown, based in Germany, Jeanette Tapia, based in the Netherlands, Emmy Falugi, based in Nigeria, and Aubrey Bolat Trinidad, based in the Philippines, will discuss their experiences and the universality of planning. With that, I'll turn the presentation over to Michael Brown.
Thank you, Janet. I'm sorry, thank you, Tippy. And thank you, Mark, for the invitation. I'm trying to find, oh, it's under this screen. Slide. Oh, I can't get to my playbook. There we go. I couldn't get to it because the webinar thing was in the way. Oh, here we go. All right. Thank you to the National Capital Area Chapter and the International Division for supporting this conversation. Last but not least, thank you to our moderator for today for her support. I am Michael Brown, a certified planner currently living and kind of working in Berlin, Germany. We're going to get to that kind of part in a little bit, but this is a teaser for you. I apologize in advance to the native and professional German speakers for butchering this beautiful language. But as my teacher told me, you cannot learn the language if you don't even try it. So here we go. Deutsches Planung von einem amerikanisch Planner, which simply translates to German planning from an American planner. By way of introduction, I just go through my educational background and experience. I have my bachelor's of architecture from Hampton University in Virginia. While there, I served as a student intern for what we call the Urban Institute that was funded by the Housing and Urban Development. And also starting to make connections to what I'm doing now. I'm going to highlight some sustainability things that I worked on. Even in undergrad, we got a grant from the National Renewable Energies Laboratory to look at the intersection of photovoltaic cells and architecture. And my fourth year in architecture, we were assigned or had an urban design studio, which I was a part of and served as a teaching assistant. This was my, I guess, introduction into the planning field by way of urban design. And after gaining my bachelor's, I went to the University of Illinois, Chicago, where I received my master's of urban planning and policy. There, I was a research assistant with the City Design Center that again looked at the intersection of architecture and urban design, along with some social issues. And as part of the research assistantship, I was a teaching assistant for an urban design studio that focused on the Chicago Plan for Transformation, in which the public housing in this particular project, the public housing on the South Side was being transformed into mixed-use communities. Now, what I didn't mention among my educational background is the interest or the wanderlust that I've always had. While at Hampton University, I was able to participate in a design seminar that took place in the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. And I also was awarded an internship for to stay and work at an architectural firm in St. Thomas Island, Virgin Islands. After I completed my education, I did some work in private consultant, and most of my career has been with the Montgomery County Planning Department, where I served with them for 11 years. So, why am I in Germany? I am currently a Robert Bosch Foundation Fellow. The Robert Bosch Foundation, for the past 36 years, have taken 15 mid-career American professionals into Germany to live and work with the mission of strengthening the transatlantic relationship between the two countries, the US and Germany. So the fellowship is composed of 8 to 11 months. I'm on a 11 month stay. Starts with a 9-week training of the language in the summer. And then we are placed into 2 or 3 work placements in your field of profession. The transatlantic topic that I chose to look at while I was here was the intersection of climate mitigation, adaptation, and local governments. Next year actually is the last year for this program in its current formation, but I highly recommend going to the Robert Bosch Foundation website to look at many more opportunities in the future that they might have for international travel and study. So that's my introduction, and I will pass it off to Emmy for her introduction.
Hello?
Hi there, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Hi, so am I just introducing myself for now? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, so let me just, where am I? Oh, good Lord, you can tell people that haven't used this for a while. View slideshow, okay. Hi everybody, so my name is Emmy Falogi, and if I can just bring that down. Oh, wow, sorry. So yeah, everybody cool, you can see me? So yeah, so my name's Emmy Falogi. I'm actually not a planner anymore. I've sort of. So my story is born in Nigeria, educated primarily in the UK. Up until I was about 21, did my master's in my first degree in communications and Spanish, and I decided not to stay in England. Applied. My aunt made me apply for an immigrant visa. Actually, I won a visa lottery. At that point, Nigeria was allowed to do that, and I won a lottery space. Got to the States. Didn't know what to do and started applying for my master's and was looking through the catalogue and it sounded interesting. So that's how I got into planning, basically. I got my master's in urban planning in 2001 from Hunter College, New York, and started off in the summers. It was a 2-year program. Started off in the summers with an internship with the New York City DOT in the transportation division. And then segued after the summer into an internship with the New York City department, city planning, but their transportation division. And then afterwards, I actually got employed, but then September 11th happened and kind of everything just blew apart. I came back that year and found a job in Philadelphia with Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. And yeah, and stayed there from 2001 until 2006. And I was a transportation planner and research analyst there, working on transportation projects in and around the Delaware Valley region, mostly to do with congestion management and air quality planning. It was kind of a mixed bag of things, and accident data. So I was very much driven. While I was doing my master's, I really enjoyed GIS, and I gravitated towards things that are a lot more quantitative. And yeah, stayed there. And then when I decided to make the move back to Nigeria, I came back, but I honestly knew nothing about planning in Nigeria whatsoever. And it's very much government related here. And I didn't have any contacts, so I looked for a job, and I was very lucky. I ended up working for SPDC, which is Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria. So Shell, basically Shell. And I ended up interviewing, knowing nothing about supply chain management, but one of the people that interviewed me was worked in their systems division of there. And in asking me questions, I was able to paraphrase and kind of understand what they're saying. And for whatever reason, they hired me. And I ended up basically managing their contract management system. I came at a point where they were worldwide, they were trying to install a new system that everybody all throughout the world could use to manage their contracts, generate contract numbers, etc. Basically manage data about their contracts. And I ended up, it failed basically, and Nigeria decided to go on its own, and I ended up being one of the people right at the beginning, working with a consultant to create the system, link it to SAP. And I found myself basically the subject matter expert for that system. But in terms of Shell and in terms of planning, I absolutely would not have been able to do any of the things I've been able to do without my planning background, without the attention to detail, etc. That without the structure it provided to break problems down and assess problems and understand that things, there is a process to getting from point A to point B. And I've ended up applying that. And definitely when it comes to data and reporting, I absolutely would not have done it without the understanding I acquired during my time as a planner in the States. And definitely coming back now, I left Shell in 2014 to pursue my own business, and end up being sucked into family business where I basically built and run a hotel. I sit on the board of an insurance company, and I also run my own creative business where I make lamps and things like that. And I'm suddenly back in planning because I run a hotel in Yenagoa, which is in the Niger Delta, where my dad is from. And in being that, and in basically trying to acquire more knowledge, etc., my dad took my CV and gave it to the governor of the state. And it just so happened at the same time they were looking for somebody to basically head a new agency called New Yenagoa City Planning Agency, because they wanted to not repeat the mistakes with the physical planning office of Yenagoa, which I'll talk about a bit more about, and basically develop a structure for managing development in this particular area. Now, I hadn't planned anything for ages. I came on board in 2018, beginning of 2018. We weren't signed into law until the end of 2018. And then I spent a year basically playing politics. And it's been a very strange experience, very interesting. But I'll get into that a bit more, and that's basically it for an introduction, I hope. I think, am I supposed to pass it on now? Oh, good God.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I am totally trying to pass it on to, is it Tippy?
It's Janet. I will go ahead and do that for you.
Okay, thanks.
Janet, don't forget to unmute yourself, please. Okay, I think Janet might be having some sound issues, so I'm going to take us back to Michael, who is going to run his presentation. Michael, are you ready? And Michael, please don't forget to unmute yourself.
Christine, do you have me? Can you hear?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, great. Okay. All right. So before I can start talking about what I'm doing now, I have to start what I was doing back in the States because it is very important and it is really truly the reason why I'm here in Germany. So the last active comprehensive plan that I worked on with the Montgomery County Planning Department was the Forest Glen Montgomery Hills Sector Plan, focusing on the area around a major thoroughfare, Georgia Avenue, and its intersection with the Capitol Beltway. This stretch of the corridor received an ADT average daily traffic of around 80,000 cars, while a portion of the road faces commercial development. If you look to the north and the south of the intersection, this is the intersection, and if you look to the north and the south of the intersection and the commercial areas, you would find that there was residential development, mostly single family, um, single unit residential development facing this very, very busy road. As a result, during our public engagement and outreach phase, we heard a lot of comments from residents that were very concerned about greenhouse gases and the other unhealthy pollutants that affect their air quality right there on their front porch. As you may know, in many populated areas, these episodic conditions are linked to the health of its residents, lower real estate value, and reduce economic productivity. So, armed with this information and knowledge, we turned our attention to this section and we wanted to ask some questions that really hadn't been asked before on this level, which is how does the transportation improvements that we were thinking about recommending, how does it affect the air quality, hopefully improve the air quality? So the evaluation we did focused on greenhouse gas emissions caused by the congested flows during rush hour for the winter and the summer season, specifically looking at CO2 as well as particulate matter and nitrogen oxide. The study also wanted to look at the variation between the summer and the winter because in summer your cars are idling with the air conditioning units on, and that might alter the exhaust in comparison to cars idling in the winter. In the end, we hope to communicate the greenhouse gas offsets for each of the proposed scenarios of transportation recommendation. So the study was recently concluded in Montgomery County. I'm currently working on a blog post with my colleague back there concerning this study, but this thinking was the impetus for my foundation fellowship application. And as a result, it has guided my work placements here. So we're in Germany now, as you can um, tell from the image on the right, traffic in Germany is just like traffic in the US. There's the only difference is in German, the word is Stau or Verkehr. And the picture you see is of Ziplinstrasse It's a major thoroughfare in and out of Potsdam. On the map to your left is the road that's highlighted in the red. So I'll lead with the lead that the project in Germany around Zippenstrasse is a complete 180 in the terms of the framing in relation to the Georgia Avenue study, even though the outcomes are hopefully going to be the same in both, uh, reduced vehicular traffic with more focus on multimodal transportation. The framing of how they got there is very different. So here in Germany, the European Union has limits for concentration of pollutants in the atmosphere. Monitoring stations are located throughout the countries, and they provide analysis of key pollutants, including particulate matter, nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, ozone, and sulfide dioxide. In Germany, particularly, cities have struggled to comply with the mandate limits concerning nitrogen oxide. In 2017, 65 cities exceeded the limit, with that number reducing to 57 cities in 2018. While there is some measure of progress there, because we're going from 65 cities to 57, these cities are technically in violation of the law. And as a result of that, lawsuits have been filed and won against cities for their failure to curb the greenhouse gas emissions. As a result, courts have imposed driving bans on diesel engine cars and um, cars in general, not just the diesel engine cars. But diesel engine cars are known because they are the primary source of nitrogen dioxide pollutants. So pollution on this road that I'm showing you, Zeppelinstrasse, has continuously exceeded the mandated limits. As a major thoroughfare, the road receives regularly congestion during the rush hours as drivers commute to and from home on this 4-lane connector. The city was legally mandated to enact strategies to reduce the pollution. So they elected to reduce the number of cars traveling on this particular road. Traffic lanes were repurposed for bike and better pedestrian facilities and a dedicated public transit lane. Although emissions of nitrogen dioxide remains high, there has been a significant reduction below the limit since the road modifications in 2007. My first work placement was at the Institute for Advanced Sustainability Studies, IASS for short. And they have a research team that focus on the social aspect of sustainability. That team is called Perception, Values, and Orientation. They look at the images and the narratives that convey ideas about the desired futures, perceptions of conflict, and fundamental views about the general nature of transformation towards a sustainable future. And so I categorize their work into 3 major pots. First would be the public sphere. They analyze the public discourse with the aim of reconstructing the collective narratives, patterns that determine the current discourse. The second is the political sphere. They analyze contemporary political practices with respect to their potential to visualize and actualize the evolution of sustainable futures. And then the last is they look at the practical processes and resources that enable individual actors to reflect upon their own philosophy and practices for more effective outcome. So in relation to the Zippelinstrasse project, where the city reduced the throughfare lanes for more multimodal transportation, the team surveyed 3,500 people and analyzed newspaper reports concerning this project. They wanted to understand the narrative around it because by gauging the local population and their perceived um, and their perception about this traffic measure and the outcome, you start to understand what is needed to have successful mobility transition in other places. As I stated earlier, there's close to 60 cities in Germany with this problem that will have to make some significant infrastructure changes. And the politicians and scientists, rightly so, are trying to understand how they could implement and move towards a more sustainable future without creating a population that is resentful and a potential political backlash. So I'm sure all this stuff is like fascinating because it was to me. And if you're a German reader or have a strong translation program, I highly recommend this document that you see before you. You can click the link at the bottom to take you to it. And I'm sure you're saying like, wow, this is wonderful stuff, Mike. What did you contribute? I didn't contribute anything. At the IASS, my role through this fellowship was an independent researcher. And so my only job was to get exposed to different sustainable projects that people are doing here on this side of the pond. I would go in and meet with the scientists that work on projects such as these, ask them questions, find out what they're working on now. They would refer me to other projects and things that might be of interest to me, given my particular background in land use, urban design, and planning. And I was clearly out of my planning element, and I didn't feel like I was actually working. Um, but I did learn a lot, and this is the team that I mostly worked with, the governance and environmental team. And one of the projects that they're working on now that I'm very curious to find out about as they move forward is they are taking air quality measurement in real time with the equipment that you see on these bicycles. So in addition to stationary monitoring devices, during hours of congestions, they would ride along the bicycle lanes to assess the amount of pollutants that are being emitted in real time, which I thought was very, very fascinating. So that was my first work placement. And 2 weeks ago, I started on my second work placement at the German Institute for Urban Affairs, known as DIFU, is the acronym for its German name, Deutsches Institut for Urbanistik. And there I am supporting the Climate Smart Cities team. The project Climate Smart City works with 3 Indian smart cities and their respective state governments to develop methods to integrate climate aspects into smart cities mission in a result-oriented manner. The 3 partner cities will focus their efforts in selected fields of municipal service to be implemented and monitored. These will the the project leads off with the Climate Smart Cities Assessment Framework, which is the graphic you see in front of you, which is a monitoring tool for 100 smart cities in the country of India. The wheel to the right represents the 30 indicators across 5 sectors that it will be monitored. Through this framework, the 100 smart cities are enabled to assess their status of climate adaptation and mitigation and target future projects and investment to the indicators. An online portal has been recently open. I think it was last week, with the first phase of input being done. So the project team that I'm working on, we're responsible for training the administrators for those 3 test cities with the intentions of providing uh, of replicating the training materials so that it can be scaled and shared with the remaining 97 cities. So it's our responsibility to give the training, repackage the material, write a training manual, and write a manual to train the trainers. So in December, my team did the training in India on the waste management sector, and we are now completing the the training material packet for that. So I've only been there for 3 weeks, but as the only native English speaker on the team, I've been delegated a somewhat editorial role of all of the materials to make sure that it flows and read correctly. However, we are gearing up for our next training that's going to take place this summer, and we are going to be focused on something that's a lot closer and almost completely in my wheelhouse, the theme of urban planning, green cover, and biodiversity. So we are just starting, we have a team meeting next week actually, to look at the indicators and to come up with strategies for the municipalities to implement that will have some result. Hopefully this summer I'll be part of the traveling team to India to take part of the training, furthering my international experience. So I was asked to, I need to move this a little bit so I can see the screen. I was asked to make a comparison between the US, and because I'm looking at sustainability, I thought it would be uh, beneficial, or it was more appropriate for me to look at it in terms of these 3 buckets. So first is the spatial level of policy drivers, where we're talking about how and where policies are made. I find this is very similar to the political structure in the US, from the local level to the city, state, county, to the, yeah, county, state, and then on to the national. It's very similar here. The only thing I would caveat is the presence of the European Union, which is an intercountry country agreement where all 27 now, yes, 27 members um, have to agree by the rules and the regulations and the laws that are passed at the EU level. So as I said in the Zeppelin Strasse example, um, the laws that the emissions were exceeding were EU laws, not German laws, not the City of Potsdam law. Those were EU laws, which has the same force of a city, state, or county regulation. So the next bucket, if you will, was the level of integration with other local policy instruments. Um, I think there's some similarity here in Germany that it is in the States, as to say that uh, sustainability is not a one-off. It seems very much integrated in all aspects of systems, be it transportation, food systems, of course, energy, and waste. In comparison to the States, my experience is that there are some places that do it better than others, but there are more places that are not, I believe, that are not integrating it as well as they're integrating it here in Germany. And then the last bucket is centered around data and numbers and measurements. And I think this is where the work here in Germany and in the EU as a whole is a little more progressive and forefront, and that they are collecting data real time. As I stated earlier, there are monitors like air quality monitor throughout the entire continent, that in real time, you can go to a website and see if nitrogen dioxide or the CO carbon dioxide is exceeding the limits in real time. And that's a level of measurements that I yet to see in many places in the States. But I also think that's because the EU also provides and set aside funds and grants to push this technology, well, to push this research forward. And oh, yeah, so that's my last slides. And lastly, I will touch on, um, I guess, the transferable skills of planning. So just based off the context of what I shared, um, I'm finding that the same issues are here that they were in the US, just in a different framing or a different form. But when you talk about the themes of local level planning, local conversation, citizen participation, um, citizen ownership, advocacy. I hear those same things here in the conversations that I have with local planners. And as far as my personal skills, I think am equipped to do a lot of the work because they're so transferable as a planner, especially in the work that I was doing in comprehensive planning. I had to be a generalist of everything, know a little bit about everything and a specialist over nothing. And I think the skills that I uh, learned and obtained to do that has served me well. In addition to communication skills, be it that of visualization, illustration, communicating verbally, or communicating in writing. Uh, those are skills that, again, that transfer across the pond very easily. And lastly, I would make note of research and analytics skills. Um, they are the same here as they were back there in the States. And I haven't gotten into many situations or conversations that I didn't feel I was well prepared, other than that of the language. And so that concludes my portion. With that, I can turn it back to Emmy or Janet.
You're going to turn it over here. I can do it for you. It's going to go over to Emmy now. Emmy, you now have the controls.
Oh, there, fantastic. So if I just go back to, um, thanks, that was really cool, Michael, by the way. I enjoyed really listening to that. And definitely there were things that you're doing, especially around air quality, that were very similar to what I did at Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. So stopping very quickly, I'm just going to go about those are the various things I've been doing. And as I said, the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, I really focused on congestion management, accident data, and air quality. But the thing that looking back during that period, I really understood that my love of data and what it can tell you, and it just in the projects I got pushed into and I had to kind of learn on my feet. Those are the things that I really took from there, and the importance of this stuff. I'm going to kind of do it a bit differently and kind of talk about because I went away from planning for so long, almost, about 12 years or so. I definitely, in conversations with friends and planners in the States, I started to really, understand the power and the importance of the things that I learned during my planning and have taken them through the rest of my working life back to what I'm currently doing now. Data collection and reporting, because of accident data and the kind of very unclean, very rough data we acquire from the police at that point. I was doing a study focused in New Jersey, and definitely I got about 40,000 records, and I was supposed to examine this stuff, come up with questions and what it was going to tell me, and a way to interpret that data to basically tell the story of what was happening, because there were so many accidents at specific points. So apart from really having to drill that into that, I really understood. It really drilled down to me the importance of paying attention to details, to data, and then of course reporting that data. And when I eventually went to Shell and I started managing this contract management system, and then of course working to actually implement one, the training and everything, I also had to maintain and continuously improve the system. And with that was visibility into data, understanding data structures, really being able to mine it and start to tell leadership what was going on. And before long, because I understood the system, I could go in there and extract information, I started being pushed towards reporting, especially health and safety reporting to certain divisions, again, all put into this big machine, because Shell is very strong on HSC and drilling down to making sure, because any mistakes there cost people their lives. So understanding safety requirements and all the information around that, again, the research element of things as well. The one thing about planning, and again, I kind of fell into planning. I didn't see it as an intention. I didn't study it during my first degree. It was really once I came to America and looking for a master's to do, it kind of popped up in looking through the syllabuses, and I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. Is the research element, being confronted with everyday issues, needs assessments, etc., and knowing that through research you will find an answer, and not being afraid to be in a place where you don't know, because there's a process and a structure to getting you to an answer, or at least understanding the world around you. And then of course the understanding collaboration, communication, and oh good grief, sorry, and the power of relationships. Again, nothing happens in planning in the States. My experience there was there was a lot of talking, a lot of meetings, a lot of stakeholders, a lot of carrying people along. Planning in the States is very much a place, for me, as I experienced it, of a bit not powerless. A little bit powerless. Let's not. I definitely felt you advisory. You told people, because of the nature of the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, especially because you were a metropolitan planning area of about larger than 50,000 people. You basically, for transportation projects, you had about 9 counties altogether, a couple in Delaware, 3 in New Jersey, and 3 in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia metropolitan area being the largest, of course, and all sitting there talking about transportation projects and understanding that without collaboration and communication, it would be it'd be even more of a terrible experience doing projects there. The horse trading that went on, especially because I worked on a few bus rapid transit projects in New Jersey, and understanding how, because of the nature of the built environment there, the process involved, the talking that involved, the understanding, the constant feedback and iterations really meant, without those elements and really understanding how they were, it'd be very difficult to get anything done. Again, drilling down, what I learned, your assumptions and biases, definitely Nigeria has definitely taught me you will live and die by your assumptions. And biases, well, again, that kind of segues into learning from the past. I remember distinctly reading the Power Broker about Robert Moses, and again reading about Le Corbusier and all his different structures and things that he put up. But the one thing in studying at Hunter College was the unintended consequences of people's actions, thinking that, you know, your bias is that you know better than other people what they need, and in doing that, whether from a good place, the unintended consequences that can happen when you don't understand, when you do not understand the assumptions you make about other people or about certain environments, and the biases you yourself bring to a situation. And definitely, as I go on and I talk about now, what I'm doing now, I'll talk a little bit about especially those two. And then, so let me just move on very quickly to what I'm doing now. So I left Shell in 2014 and to basically take off hold of my dad's business interests, as well as pursue my own. And one of them was coming to Yenagoa. Now, Yenagoa is the capital of Bayelsa State, which is one of the newest states in Nigeria. It's in the Niger Delta, as you can see. It's kind of in the Gulf of Guinea, and Bayelsa State was founded. It's only about 22 years old. Well, not 22. Let's see, 2020. Well, you figure it out, 24, 25. My math is horrible. But 1st of October 1996. It's a region that's very swampy. There's not that much land mass, and what there is very, very swampy mangroves and rainforests, and it's of course southern Nigeria. And the state capital, Yenagoa, is only about 350,000 people as of 2006, but it's probably about 500,000 about now, and sitting on approximately 6 kilometers. It's a traditional home of the Ijaw people. They speak a very specific Calabaria, which my dad is half Calabrian, half Lebanese. Long story. And primarily fishermen and palm oil farmers traditionally from the past. But it's also where massive deposits of petroleum and natural gas deposits, of course, are sitting here. So Ajip, Shell, all of them are here. So I came in 2014. My dad had started a hotel, constructing a hotel at near 70 years old, and basically got into trouble dealing with it. So I know nothing about construction, but I thought, well, let me try and help my dad, and I ended up learning about construction. And anyway, settled. I didn't live here permanently. I go back and forth between Lagos, Port Harcourt, which is a neighbor from which Bayelsa was carved out of. River State was much bigger, included Bayelsa until 1996, when the less developed part was kind of carved out into Bayelsa, so that it was felt that by having a specific state, you would, and that's very distinctive to the Ijaw people, it would drive development, because again, this is a region that was, you know, if anybody knows anything about the oil industry in Nigeria at all, really were cheated out of a lot. And so this was kind of as a way to kind of drive development and help the Ijaw people kind of pull their bootstraps up and have their own nation, sort of. So these are some images. This is the stadium, Samson CSCS Stadium. This is a flyover that's not far from our hotel, actually, leading into kind of like the CBD. Now, in coming here, it's open, it's got development, but it really is messy. These are images of Fangley Bridge, and if you cross on the other side, it ends up at this market, which is Swali Market. I mean, it's interesting, it's vibrant and everything, but it is, you know, for the kind of money we've had, it is woefully lacking in structure. And then segue to one of the major issues that we have here. There was a master plan done by a very, very good architect from the state. He was actually a trained planner as well, He owns a big construction company in the Niger Delta here. And he was one of the people involved, I would say elder statesmen, along with the federal government, that really were involved in the committee to carve out what became Bios Estate and kind of drive, development and, really start to work on all the structures to put, the state together, the physical environment at least. So there was a master plan. I remember seeing it before I came back to Nigeria in 2006. And quite detailed, where everything, how they wanted development to be, the site plans, everything was going, but politics. The moment they came into power, what you find is, it's all over Nigeria, this is just my experience here, is that it's a paper exercise. We have a very strong but very corrupt civil service who, the nature of the economy as well, and the fact that our political process is really, really hijacked by political parties and self-interest, to be quite honest. So depending on the nature of the head of the beast and their interests and their abilities and the people they bring on, the nature and characteristics of what you see around you is what develops. What happened, as you can see here, these are certain areas, is we have major, so Julius Berger built most of our highways and thoroughfares, but what you found is that investment going forward outside the initial push, the Physical Planning Office is woefully underfunded. You do have civil servants that are well trained, but their heads are usually political appointees who, a lot of times it's self-interest. It's about trying to, how do I phrase this? It's not that they don't come with good ideas, but it's so dependent on whatever they feel is important, and they don't seem to refer back to the master plans. You find that because of the nature of politics here, continuity is a problem, which means that if you're not going to sustain projects between administrations, what you find is that sustainability is basically in the toilet. So you have master plans, but they don't follow them. People come to physical planning, put up buildings, they don't follow the zoning laws. Next thing you know, you have people building on waterways and flood, and because we're in an area that's very swampy, they have blocked all sorts of tributaries, so everybody builds on themselves, and what you have is massive flooding, because the way we build here also isn't necessarily the best for our environment, because we use a lot of concrete, we block off waterways, and this is the result. Physical planning, you find a lot of, this is a road, but you also find most people, almost without a doubt, don't follow the footprint, and then they're sometimes building on the roads. And even though physical planning will go out and mark things for demolition and fine people, etc., what you find is the political process has been subverted by corruption. And if you have enough money, you can get out of just about anything, at least temporarily. So again, let me go back. So based on this, the governor of the state, he actually just left today. Today was his last day at the end of his 8-year, he was a 2-term governor. He came in and he started investing in education and health, especially female education. He built a lot of infrastructure, etc. But one of the things they wanted like something different. They wanted an area that looked different, felt different from the rest of Yenagoa, which they haven't abandoned, but you want a fresh start. You want something that is world class and you want to draw people here. You have the oil companies here, and you want to be able to, and most people just work and leave. They want people to enjoy being in Yenagoa, invest, come. So you have to have the right sort of environment for people, the sort of people you want to stay and work and invest. So they started doing several projects. There's a golf course behind Government House, etc. and then decided like 2 years ago to just make a kind of special development zone called the New Yenagoa City, and try and start to do something different. So New Yenagoa City, they created this agency. The area it's covering is about approximately 600 hectares. It is going to be added to, but for now it's tiny. It's very small. As I said, the law establishing the agency happened in September 2018. We are being tasked basically manage development in this area, from land allocation to master planning to managing development approvals, controls, and monitoring everything, and the usual setting up the structures that can help you manage land use, ensure transparency in the planning process as well, because a lot of it is so amorphous here, intentionally so, and facilitate cooperation and coordination between the public and private sectors. Now, this is the area here. This is New Yenagoa. This is the area. So this is sort of like a layout plan. This is the golf course here. This is the Nun River here. This is the APA Creek. So it's bounded between basically one very fast, big river and kind of like a smaller creek, but that still, during the rainy season, can get scarily full. So you have that there. And then all of this here is going to be, it's called a government reserve area, GRA. So it's kind of like a low density, excuse me, come back please. Sorry, I live in a hotel and it's a bit funny. So this is it here. As you can see, if you look here, it follows the shape. This is a Google image I took from the beginning of the year towards the middle of last year. So you have this shape. This is the Nun. This is the APA. This is the golf course that started off, but is now within New Yenagoa City. So it's all of here. Then this is where the government house is. So it's something that's very close. This is that stadium I showed you guys is located here, and then Medical University that's kind of just opened recently, part of the investment of this current outgoing government. Now, as you can say, it really is a green field. There is nothing. There are no roads, nothing. It's completely green. So you really have the chance to do something extraordinary here with investment, etc., and participating in this is kind of, it's wild. I never thought ever in a million years I'd come back to planning, and definitely kind of into this. So I'm a bit, I'm definitely nervous because I feel at times a little bit underqualified because I've been out of it for so long. But as it points out, you never really stop being a planner, and in everything I've done, I've gained experience. I've run businesses, and I'm still running a successful business here, etc. So it's not, and I'm also realized that I'm not doing it alone. What you are is more of an advocate more than anything else, bringing the right people together in a room and basically hashing this thing out, which is really how it happens here. This is kind of I had a kind of a rendering done, just something to visualize. And then this is kind of a deeper look at, deeper look at it. So it's about a little over half of the landmass is going to be this GRA. And the way it works, it's basically people apply with forms, you pay for these forms, and then you apply, and in the lottery system, you basically get the chance to pay for very little money, the equivalent of like, let's see, about $300 or so. You can buy about approximately 1,500 square meters each plot. So a standard plot is about 500 square meters, so it's times 3. Now, where it comes, the money really comes in, it's about $10,000 you'd pay, is to do the certificate of occupancy, which is a much more rigorous system and certificate of ownership. But you don't have to. Once you get the plot, you can build and develop at will. So the agency, we're going to set up all the structures for managing that. So we've got zoning. So it really is exciting. You have to set up the zoning laws, etc. The planning office that is going to go over monitoring and watching developmental controls, etc. All of that. But there's still the whole thing about the infrastructure, setting it up, the roads, the drainage, the plants, etc. So there's a whole aspect of this thing. Most of the land that the land that can be allocated has been. It used to have a lot more green space, but the push and the drive for acquiring land is real. And unfortunately, the whole having plenty of green spaces thing disappeared out the window, at least somewhat. So it's fine. This is a little bit more about how that area is situated, because again, my love of GIS, that's the first thing when my agency was, I had a little bit of money. I went to Esri, started putting everything down, because I just feel that everything we have has to be loaded up. We have to have everything using technology. And that is something, again, that within the ministries here we are woefully, our civil service, we are still, I would say 90% paper, literally 90% paper. And some of it as well, it is stubbornness by the civil service and certain people within there to embrace it. Of course, we have computers and stuff, but again, funding is a problem. And then when people do come in the political arm to run these items, because usually the heads of all these ministries are political appointees, not from the civil service, what you find in so many times is they don't invest in those areas. So we have a civil service, from planners to engineers to people in everything, who are basically just, it's a job and it's security, but there is no motive, there's very little motivation. There's a lot of cynicism because they've seen too many times people come in and just not keep their word, and definitely not very little investment in equipment, office upgrades, etc. If I showed you pictures of some of the offices, you'd be horrified. But be that as it may, I've come with my own mentality and I know what I would like to achieve. The golf course is still under development, and it's going to be, this started before I ever came on board, but this is what it's going to be. This is what it looked like as of last August. They've also put a polo field. Yeah, I don't really understand that, but polo field with fishermen, I don't know. But anyway, they're trying to bring a different class of people here, and polo players do go everywhere. In there, I think in here was actually, when this place was built, there is a governor's lodge. This was the governor's lodge, and this was the deputy governor's lodge. Now, the present governor thought it was a waste, and it really was, and they redeveloped it into a hotel that sits in there, and that's been in use. And this is what it looks like. But the garden, it's not a great hotel per se. It's all right, but the gardens are beautiful. So you have that, and then this is a little bit about, the rest of New Yenagoa City, and it's really, there is nothing. It is virgin. So that's basically it. Right now, as of yesterday, I had thought that I am so sorry. I believe that I've really run out. But yeah, if you guys have asked questions, I'll definitely talk a little bit more then. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Is it Tippy?
Nope, I'm going to turn it over to Janet for you, who can wrap us up. And let's see if we can get her audio on. Let's see here.
Hello.
Excellent. This is Jeanette.
Okay, Emmy. I think we're switched over.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for coping with the technical issues. Can everybody hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you. Could you maximize your screen, please, like we did in? Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeanette Tapia, and I'm an urban planner and urban designer. And as my screen suggests, I'm currently in the Netherlands, in The Hague. First, I'll give a brief introduction of myself, talk a little bit about my current work, speak about planning in the Netherlands, in Belgium, and in Peru, my home country. And I'll talk a little bit about contribution of my US formation. And I'll try to breeze through that just to keep you guys on time. So I may go a little bit fast, but I'll show a lot of pictures. Again, I'm Jeanette Tapia, and I started my career in the US. I went to the University of Cincinnati for my Bachelor of Urban Planning, and I did an exchange at the University of Amsterdam. I returned to the University of Cincinnati to complete a master's and graduate urban design certificate. And I also returned to Europe for an exchange on my master. And I did that at the Catholic University of Leuven in Belgium. And I am from Peru, so I wanted to tell a little bit that background. From Lima, Peru. And for those of you who have been there, Lima is a coastal city, beautiful cliffs, 10 million inhabitants, very wonderful and very complex. Of course, you see the disparities between rich and poor and the built development, as a very large portion of the city has been unplanned, but has relied and survived due to the strength of the communities with each other and self-help housing. A little bit of my journey, I had the opportunity to live, work, and participate in projects in different parts of the world. Today, I will only focus on some of them, also because of the time crunch. In the present, I live in The Hague, actually 15 minutes bike ride from this building. In my current work at this time is in the Netherlands Water Partnership. It's an organization, a foundation that works closely with the government that represents the Dutch water sector. In my current job, I work as a project manager in an urban resilience program for the Dutch government, for the Dutch water sector. And I'm also a project manager for the bilateral cooperation between the US and the Netherlands, and Mexico and the Netherlands in Delta teams. What I describe as a Delta team is really a Dutch approach. Delta teams usually look like this. We work with the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water, with the Netherlands Business Enterprise Agency, and I represent the Netherlands Water Partnership in these projects. And my role is basically representing the Dutch water sector in this cooperation. An example of our work in Mexico, at this time we have two activities that we're following. First, we have a project in Oaxaca in sustainable mobility and climate adaptation, where we have a team, a consortium of Mexican and Dutch firms working together in a project. And we're also following some activities in Quintana Roo for integrated coastal management and climate change adaptation. The Netherlands Water Partnership, the organization that I work for, works with government entities like water boards, like cities all over the world. We also work a lot with knowledge institutions that do applied research, or also universities. We also work with private firms like planning consultancy firms, water technology firms, engineering consultancy firms, and also, of course, with NGOs. The focus that what I do at this time is it revolves a lot on urban resilience. And actually from Michael's presentation and from Emmy's presentation, I see that we have that commonality. I decided to focus on this topic because it was the reason why I went into planning. I saw that the stresses and shocks were hitting cities more frequently, and I was really inspired by that. They're usually in different parts of the world, also especially in areas that are vulnerable in very different ways. And we see that countries, regardless of their status, whether they're developed or in means of development, that there's opportunity to help each other out basically with these topics. I also had the opportunity to collaborate in really nice projects in climate change adaptation and mitigation after Sandy in the Northeast Coast, which really inspired me to continue along this type of work. I'm happy in my current position to be able to work with communities and authorities from different parts of the world that seek out to partner up with the Netherlands when it comes to climate change, because it is affecting them through flooding, through hurricanes, typhoons, droughts. And I'm happy to be able to basically make the link with nature-based solutions. And over the course, I've also learned a lot about water efficiency and stewardship. As a lot of you know, the Netherlands has a heritage of living with the water. The water is everywhere, and it has a big influence on the lifestyle. And you see it also in business. You see that the country really adapts to that. Elements that we see as part of the built and living environment are really there to protect us. For example, this is a sea defense dune that protects a community that's under sea level. This community, you can see it actually from this picture much better. The dune is, of course, like an ice park, but it's really there to protect that area. And as a side effect, these dunes also provide a wonderful nature space, recreational activities for the communities. And you see this approach of using nature for protection in different parts of the country in different ways. Dutch cities have evolved over the years. In the past, and when appropriate, you also see these more older flooding mitigation techniques. But also in new neighborhoods, you get to see a lot of those initiatives. One thing that stands out to me is that Dutch land development has resulted in rather compact cities. They have a version of urban growth boundaries, and as you can see in this photo, you see a very compact city, and then immediately no transitions, not like the transects that we usually see in the US. You go straight to agricultural land. One main modality that you see for housing is a row house model, which keeps the city compact, small, also good for energy efficiency. So your single family home is generally more, is almost always attached. For public housing, it's a different story. They usually use high rises. Also, something that has called my attention in the Netherlands is that almost all activity center really focuses on the west side of the country. So people commute 2-3 hours to the west. And that's also where current efforts to build more housing are located. When I think about planning and development in the Netherlands, to give a little bit of background, and after talking to some colleagues that are also in planning, there are some similarities and differences with the US. For example, for master plans, for long-range master planning, we also use the average 20-year spans. As always, flexibility is key because a lot of can happen in 20 years. Emmy mentioned a little bit about design standards and code and zoning code. Here, it is really clear written procedure, very similar to what it is in the US. And they generally stick with what's on the plan and what's on the design standards and the code. We also see, similar to the US, the fact that there's planned communities. It's quite common. And also now with the big goal by the government to build 1 million dwellings by 2030, you also see that a lot in certain cities. And who plans? In different parts of the world, sometimes it's architects, sometimes they're planners. Here you do see planologues or planners, and also architects that have a planning specialization. And some of the top topics, if you ask Dutch planner, is energy transition, climate change adaptation, and housing goals, the housing goals that I mentioned. One thing that stands out, we all have seen those internet videos about the Netherlands, being really progressive and innovative. One thing that I think has really contributed to that is we have a really strong pilot culture.
By legislation, actually the government has opened up for this cooperation between knowledge institutions, government entities, and private firms, and also sometimes NGOs to do applied research. And that translates into being able to try new forms of development, fix them, do it again. And we're running out of time, so I will go very fast. Transportation, we all know the Dutch bike a lot, and surprisingly, car trips are still half of all trips. But parking is really expensive, so in the cities you don't see as much of that nuisance. Also, the DNA footprint of the Dutch cities is that you always have access to public transportation, to bikes, to reliable bike lanes everywhere. This is in a very remote village, and you still see that. Also, consensus. The Netherlands is really keen on being able to work together. In some cities, you see city councils made up of 6 different political parties. So people are able to work together for the greater good and put aside their differences. And you also see that in other parts of government and local government. Also, the pragmatism. This is, for example, this is a space that used to be vacant, really close to the central station of Rotterdam, that would have been a really eyesore, but this wonderful complex now has green roofs, restaurants, and all the names that you see on the boards are different planning, urbanism, design firms that have gathered there. So just being a little bit pragmatic about the use of land from the government as well. Also, this pragmatism is, I see, is seen in how the dwellings evolve to accommodate their needs, allowing families to stay in their homes or make changes over time. So you see some additions here. Now I will focus on Belgium very fast and wrap it up. In Belgium, you see a similar situation. Most of the country works in Antwerp, Ghent, and Brussels, so that also brings a lot of traffic. Why? Because as opposed to the Netherlands, instead of building a little bit more compact, we do see a different type of sprawl that basically spreads over through every road. So there's the impression that there's no more land, that everything has been built out, but it's really on the way of development. Very similar to the US, we have the single family detached home model, which if you translate that at the macro scale, you can run out of land in a country really fast. Also, Belgium is very multicultural. You see different races and communities interacting together. So that's also challenging for planners to be able to reach to all these different populations. Public housing, the state of public housing in Belgium is really going under challenges. And that's something that we also see in different parts of the world. In Belgium, different than the Netherlands, master plans, also different than here in the US, master plans are usually from the 60s or 70s, and they do have amendments, but you see that there's a lot more challenges because the present situation is completely different in 1960s. You do have to have face-to-face municipalities to make things advance, to build rapport with them. Also, home ownership is very high, unlike the Netherlands where people rent more. Design standards are written, code is written, but they're widely open for local negotiation when it comes to development. And they're also going some changes. Before, you will have a lot of city clerks working in planning positions, but now you see a lot more the sophistication of the profession, and over the last couple of decades, you see more architects and planners with the specializations doing this work. And with that, I will move to my last slide just to wrap it up with the contributions of the US planner. I think in different contexts, I think we come from a culture of procedure, of having code, of having comprehensive plans and land use codes. And that's, I think, one strength that we can collaborate with in different countries. We also have a culture of inclusion and being the advocate for the disadvantaged. Also, we come with a lot of creativity. In the US, you see the PPP schemes that you have to work to be able to move with development. So we can provide some guidance on applications of those. And also, we're a little more familiar with financial mechanisms in local government. When it comes to climate change in the US, we're seeing more that we need to take a proactive role instead of reactionary when it comes to communities. And I think you also are well-rounded in our formation. In addition of knowing about physical planning, we have a financial understanding. We're implementation-minded on not only making nice designs, but also thinking of how the local government offices will actually bring them about. And also we have an understanding of legal and policy roles. And I wanted to thank the people that helped me with their feedback. And this is my contact information. Thank you so much. And I will give it over to Mark.
You can just leave it because we're actually going to wrap up right now.
All right.
So if for those of you that jumped on a little late, or if you just saw for a quick moment, people were typing in asking for the names and contact info for our speakers today, and you will be able to find all of that. We've recorded this session. We're going to post it on our YouTube channel so you can see it there. And we're also combining the presentation as one PDF, and we're going to post it to our webcast webpage, so you can also find it there. So ohioplanning.org/planning webcast is where you can find all the information, your CM credit info, so you can get those credits, and links to the PDF and the recording on our YouTube channel. So thanks to all of our presenters today, and to Mark from the National Capital Area Chapter, and Tippy, the representative from the International Division, for joining us today and for pulling this together for us. This was super interesting. So I'm glad, and I hope we can kind of have a round 2 of this soon in the future. So everyone, thanks for joining us today, and we will all talk next time. Thank you.